Today we'll learn about Git rebasing and how easy it is to update your feature branch with changes from any other branch. Let's get started. Now before we start actually using the git rebase command to rebase our feature branches, first let's go back and review what a commit is and how we can conceptualize that. So a single commit is a group of one or more file changes within a Git repository that are grouped together and are saved as a commit set of changes within the Git database. We can conceptualize this commit as a single plate. And as we add more commits onto the branch, then we can get a series of plates stacked up on top of each other. Now, this visualization really helps us, especially when we start thinking about the order of the commits, where the oldest commit is the bottom plate, and the most recent commit is the plate that's on the top. And as we add more commits, they just get stacked on top of each of the other existing plates. This helps us conceptualize what is really a series of Git commits within a single branch. Now, each Git branch has its own commit stack, independent of the other branches. So, for example, on the left here, we have a branch that has 2 commits, and in the middle, we have a branch that has 8 or so commits, and on the right, we have another branch that has a series of its own set of commits. But again, each of these are by default independent of the others, because each branch is actually a snapshot of a previous branch. So in this case, we have our master branch. We have another branch called finish jumpstart, and we have another branch called finish rxjs. Now, when we use git checkout to check out a branch, then Git actually creates the new branch based on a snapshot of the current branch. So for example, if we do a git checkout finish/jumpstart, and we're on the master branch, then the first thing Git does is it will actually take a snapshot of all the commits, current commits on master, and use those as the base for the new commits that are going to go on to this new branch called finish/jumpstart. And as we add new commits to that branch, they will just stack up. Likewise, if from finish jumpstart, we then created a new branch called finish rxjs, again, it would take a snapshot of both of those stacks, create them as the base for the new RxJS branch, and any new commits we added on top of that would be just additional plates stacked on top of each other. Now, when we use our new log output command, or shell command, which is essentially a short version, remember, of git space plog, we can see a prettified version of the git log output. And this log has some interesting things going on here. Notice that the commits, again, go from the oldest at the bottom to the most recent at the top. This can be initially a bit confusing, because when you first might think that the items listed at the top are the oldest and the ones at the bottom are the newest. It's actually the other way around, much like the plates stacking on top of each other. Now this makes sense because when we do a log output, more than likely we want to see the most recent ones first. And then we can page through the history and scroll on down through the others. So we can see here that this is our most recent commit, and then these others, and this is, again, our oldest commit. We also have something very interesting going on here in terms of this notation here, where we're seeing something related to branches. So something related to that this commit is also on master, and then this commit is also on finish jumpstart, and this commit here is also on not only on finish rxjs, which is the current branch, and we see that here, but we can also see that the current head of Git, which means anytime you add any new commits, will go on top of this current commit. This head is pointed currently to finish/rxjs. And this same SHA here is also up on origin. That's pretty nice. And if we look here at the finish jumpstart, this SHA C1FA3E7 is also up on origin. And similarly for master here, we can see that this SHA is not only in the master locally, but it's also up on origin. it's also being used, it's also up on Origin Classroom Jumpstart. So let's break this apart a little bit and see if we can understand this a little bit better. So imagine that now we've taken this log output and we've split it apart into a separate set of stacks of plates, much like this analogy right here on the left. So we could see that we have a series of commits on master, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 commits. Now granted, we're only showing 2 plates, but we have 5 commits here. And then all of a sudden we have another set of commits that seem to be on top of that, which are another 8 commits that are in Finish Jumpstart. And then we also seem to have another set of commits on top of that, another 8 or 9 commits that are unfinished RxJS. So we can see how the plates are stacking up, but how do we visualize that in terms of branches and what's going on with all these different branches here? So the first thing is imagine that we have these commits up on master, these right here. Now, what we want to do is check out Finish Jumpstart based on these sets here. So here we see the arrows that indicate that the progression of the commits, oldest stacked up to the top, to the newest. And now we want to use this node here as a base point to create a new branch called Finish/Jumpstart. And as we add commits to this particular branch, again, we will see arrows and they will just stack up. And these commits you see in these nodes correspond to these commits here. And again, if we use this point here, this current point here, the SHA C1FA3E7, to do a checkout for the Finish/RxJS, now that becomes a base point for any new commits we want to do in this new branch. And as we add these commits here, again, lab 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, as we add these commits here, they will stack up on top. And finally, we are at the current head here. So we can see how the log output corresponds to a branch diagram and how it's analogous to the plate stacking. But now what we are starting to see is a sense of how these different branches can be used as base points for the other branches. This is really, really important because this is how things work by default when you create a new branch within Git. It's also important for when we are in one branch that is using a different branch as its base, and that branch changes. So, for example, let's consider that we want to add 2 commits to master. If I do a log here, I can see that Origin master still has 1, 2, 3, 5 commits, but it does not have these 2 commits. Okay, that's fine. So now I have these 2 commits here. This is independent of any other branch, unless I explicitly rebase those other branches. Here on master, we have 2 extra commits. Notice there was this commit 1707, and now there's 2 extra commits. If I jump over to Finish RxJS, I can see here that master has 1707, but it does not have our 2 commits. They're missing. In other words, when I went from master and then I used that as a base for Finish Jumpstart, that then started it with 1142 based on the SHA 1707. So I'm missing 2 commits in between. This whole stack here then is missing the 2 commits. So the question becomes, why did these 2 new commits in master not show in the Finish RxJS? And the answer is because I did not rebase Finish RxJS onto the new changes from master. I did not update Finish RxJS to use a new updated base branch information. So what I need to do is update the base commits. I need to rebase. And once I rebase, now Finish Jumpstart will be using the latest final sets of changes in master. And then if I rebase again, Finish RxJS, it will use the updates to this here. I have two options for how I can do my rebase. I could use the command get rebase and then the branch I want to rebase from. And in this case, I would say get rebase from master while I'm in the current branch finish RxJS. Or I could use get pull dash rebase and pull from the remote, in this case would be origin, and then the branch, which would be master. Now, the really nice thing about get pull is it implicitly does a get fetch, so it gets the latest information from this online source branch. However, if I know that I just want to use a local branch instead of one in upstream or in origin, then I could use get rebase. Jumping over to the terminal window, let's take a look at the log output here for our current branch, which is finish/rxjs. Just like we saw in the slides, here we can see that we actually have this branch is based on two other branches. Finish.rxjs, the current head, which means if I add any other commits, will go on top of 06E6EC. This branch is actually based on a different branch called finish jumpstart, and finish jumpstart is based on master. The first thing we want to do is realize that according to our best practices, we should always be basing our feature branch work off of develop, never off master. Remember, master is for production releases only. So let's do that. Let's take a look at develop for a moment. If I look at the log output for develop, I can see that 17073 is here, just like we have in the finish RxJS branch. However, the log develop actually has two other commits that have been added to it. So we want to rebase finish RxJS on top of the develop branch. I can then use the following command, get rebase the current branch off of develop. So now we've rebased finish RxJS on top of the develop branch, and if I do a log output here, I can see that now we have the master branch and the develop branch, and then finally the finish RxJS. However, something has gone wrong here because we don't seem to have any information about the finish/jumpstart branch that we used to have before. We need to make sure that this branch is also updated with the latest from develop. So the way we can do that is we can actually say, do a get checkout to finish jumpstart. Let's look at the logged output here. Right, so it's still based on master only. Now if I say get rebase develop, where I'm going to rebase the current branch on top of the changes, recent changes that are listed in develop. Now when I do a log output, I can see now that the finish jumpstart is based on develop, which is based on the commits from master. This looks great. Now if I go back to the finish RxJS branch and I do a log output, I don't see anything yet, right? I did update the finish jumpstart, but I didn't see those changes here in the finish RxJS. That's because I need to rebase finish RxJS on top of finish jumpstart. So get rebase the current branch on top of finish jumpstart. Now when I show the log output, everything is looking great. So now I actually have my finish RxJS, which is based on the jumpstart, which is based on develop, which is based on master. That's looking really good. And if I look at the finish jumpstart, I can see the jumpstart's based on develop, which is based on master. And finally, if I do a look at develop, I can see that the two recent changes in develop are based on master. So this is a quick demonstration on how you can use the command get rebase with some source branch to rebase the current branch commits on top of the source branch commits.